May we have your attention, please? Welcome to Sanders Theater. Please take a moment to identify the nearest exit. In addition to the 6 regular exits, there are 2 emergency exits located at the back of the mezzanine and balcony levels. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this 30th celebration of the Goldsmith Prize for Investigative Reporting in the Public Interest. I'm Nancy Gibbs, I'm the director of the Shorenstein Center, and I'm so glad so many of you braved the nor'easter, COVID, Boston traffic to join us tonight. We honor tonight the kind of journalism that justifies the faith the founders of this country showed when they made the press the only constitutionally protected industry in the land. The journalism that justifies and should remind our readers and listeners and viewers that at its best, a free press is a form of national service, even national defense, protecting the rights and safety and well-being of the people it serves. And we celebrate tonight this work at a time when the free press worldwide is especially threatened by autocrats intent on crushing it, by platforms designed to bury it, even by human nature itself, which draws us towards outrage and fear and anger to the point that division and hate become profit centers. The work we recognize tonight is the kind of work that brings us together, that lets us understand how better our politics, our policy, our governance can improve lives, advance accountability, and promote fairness and justice in our communities. We celebrate 30 years of journalism like this.
We literally found men enslaved on fishing boats, locked in cages, and buried under fake names in a remote island graveyard in Indonesia.
We had noticed that there had been this disparity between the way Haitians were treated and the way Cubans were treated. So we decided to take a closer look.
I do investigative journalism because of its ability to impact people's lives.
It was one of those rare times when I actually believed these voices cannot be ignored. Something will change.
The Goldsmith Prize for Investigative Reporting was first awarded in 1993, making this the 30th anniversary that the Shorenstein Center has awarded this prize to celebrate the best reporting done in the public interest and in pursuit of the public good.
The best definition of investigative reporting is reporting about something that someone with some degree of power wants to keep a secret.
Investigative reporters are relentless. They're the linchpin of a functioning democracy.
We are the watchdogs who can hold people accountable.
The Goldsmith Prize represents the kind of journalism that challenges assumptions and ensures accountability, that gives voice to people who might not otherwise be seen or heard.
To be nominated, finish as a finalist or a winner is an honor.
It rewards solid investigative reporting that has an impact on politics and government and life.
The neatest thing about the Goldsmith Awards is that you get to talk about the work that you did, and even better, you get to hear other people talk about the work that they did.
All across Southeast Asia, in more than 2,000 houses, this is happening. And I remember thinking that this is truly the power of investigative journalism. It changed this man's life forever.
Tonight, we will also honor two books that help support our civic health and improve democratic governance through an examination of the intersection of media, politics, and public policy. And we get to celebrate the work of an iconic journalist whose career has shaped our understanding of our world and our discourse. These awards were founded back in 1991 thanks to the vision of the Greenfield Family Foundation, which has supported it every year since. This anniversary gala tonight is our first time doing this event at full scale in person since 2019. And we're so pleased to see all of you here, especially so many former winners and finalists and judges. We're also glad that the Greenfield Foundation trustees, Jill Greenfield-Feldman, Joan and Bill Greenfield, Bill Epstein, and Mike Greenfield are all here with us. We have a special thanks to Mike, who has served as a judge almost every year since 2003, which is back when we would be shipping huge cardboard boxes full of printed submissions to him. The process, fortunately, has been a bit streamlined since then, although it has not gotten any easier to choose. We'll start this evening with the Goldsmith Book Prize, which my colleague Tom Patterson, the Bradley Professor of Government and the Press at Harvard Kennedy School, will present.
Nancy, thank you. Now, 2 Goldsmith Book Prizes are awarded each year, one for the best academic book and one for the best trade book in the field of media, politics, and public policy. Eligibility is limited to books published within the past 2 years. As chosen by the selection committee, this year's academic winner is Newshole, The Demise of Local Journalism and Political Engagement. The decline of the local newspaper is a familiar story. Hundreds of them have shut down with the loss of thousands of jobs. But as our prize-winning book shows, losing a newspaper is more than an issue of locked doors and laid-off workers. When it goes, so does the community's civic health. Lower turnout in local elections, less responsive local officials, less civic engagement, heightened polarization, less social trust, weaker community ties, less awareness of what's going on at City Hall, the school board, and the county commission. In short, when a newspaper goes out of business, the community stops acting like a community. Make no mistake, without solid journalism, democracy itself is at risk. That's not just a theory. It's a conclusion based on exhaustive research and solid evidence. The authors analyzed 15 years of reporting in more than 200 local newspapers, while also studying election returns, opinion surveys, and other indicators to track community engagement. A study of this scale takes a team. Dozens of student research assistants aided the 2 political scientists who wrote this truly landmark book. Danny Hayes of George Washington University and Jennifer Lawless of the University of Virginia. Danny and Jennifer, please come up to receive the Goldsmith Academic Book Award for Newshole, The Demise of Local Journalism and Political Engagement. Jennifer, this one's for you. Congratulations. Danny, this one's for you. Now they want us over here for the picture.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks everyone for being here. We're really honored to be here with such a great group of investigative reporters and other scholars and experts. And I think we're just really gratified that the committee recognized the work, and we really appreciate the work that the local journalists who do this job every day have done, and we're really honored by them as well. Thank you very much.
So that reference to students who helped with this book, I should note who's not here tonight. I think this is the first time the Goldsmith Awards have been done during spring break. So if you look around the room and you see an absence of younger faces, that's, I think they're off skiing and warmer places and the like. So that's why they're not here this evening. As I mentioned, there's also a Goldsmith Prize for the best trade book. What happens when you're a foreign correspondent and see the coming of a war, one that America and much of Europe stubbornly refused to see? That's the story of Last Call at the Hotel Imperial, the reporters who took on a world at war. At the center of the story are 4 European-based American journalists: the Chicago Sun-Times, John Gunther, Hearst reporter H.R. Knickerbocker, the author and journalist Jimmy Sheehan, and the New York Herald Trib's Dorothy Thompson. Vienna's Hotel Imperial was their watering hole, but their beat was Berlin, Paris, Rome, anywhere where Europe's slow descent into madness could be documented. It was the 1920s and 30s as first Mussolini and then Hitler came to power. The 4 journalists, rivals yet friends, jockeyed for access and interviews in their effort to tell a complacent world that the peace that followed World War I might not hold. Mussolini was the easy interview to get. Knickerbocker alone met with him 4 times. Hitler was elusive. Dorothy Thompson finally managed to interview him and later became the first American correspondent to get thrown out of Germany. Thompson also wrangled an interview with Leon Trotsky while finding time along the way to leave her husband to marry the Nobel-winning novelist St. Clair Lewis. The book exposes so much personal and political intrigue while highlighting the best of foreign reporting that it's impossible to summarize in the brief time that I have. Let me just say that it's a page-turner. The events and personalities unfolding as in a novel, although it is in fact a chronicle of a world sliding toward all-out war. The book's author, Deborah Cohen, is a professor of history at Northwestern University and a frequent contributor to The Atlantic. Deborah, please step up to receive the Goldsmith Trade Book Award for Last Call at the Hotel Imperial. It was a pleasure to meet. We're going to take a picture and then if you want to work.
Thank you so much to the committee, to the prize committee. It is really an honor to be here with so many extraordinarily brave reporters, really reporting the stories that we all need to hear. The people at the heart of my book did the same thing, only they did so with much more support and much more public acclaim. But what their stories tell us is how important it is that the public should actually understand what is happening out there and how crucial all of you are to us understanding that. So thank you again, and it's really an honor.
Thank you, Tom, and congratulations to all of you. This year's judges for the Investigative Reporting Prize reviewed about 150 nominations and did the harrowing work of reducing that to this list of finalists. Honestly, every year, those conversations among the judges are a genuinely fascinating, inspiring, exhausting exploration of the challenges facing journalists today, the new techniques that they use to go about their work, the extraordinarily impressive doggedness that they show up against all kinds of obstacles in trying to get to as it is said, the best available version of the truth. So as much as we honor the finalists and our winner, I also have enormous respect for our judges who put so much thought and work into judging what really contributes to excellence and impact in the public interest. This year's judges, please stand if you are here tonight. Jill Abramson, Kathleen Carroll, Sarah Cohen, Emily Dreyfus, Betsy Fisher-Martin, Mike Greenfield, Corey Johnson, Carmen Noble, and Connor Sheets. Thanks to all of you. The 6 finalists for the 2023 Goldsmith Prize, like finalists from years past, in their work pull back the curtain on how power is wielded and how journalists can hold the powerful to account. At a time when so many newsrooms, especially our smaller local newsrooms, face crushing pressures, these stories demand patience and curiosity and courage and countless FOIA requests and data dives to get to the elusive truths that they reveal. The finalists are Eliza Shapiro and Brian Rosenthal of the New York Times for How Hasidic Schools Are Reaping Millions but Failing Students.
I never heard of a situation where the school leaders actually wanted to fail. And that was the situation here. Our stories revealed that more than 100 private religious schools serving New York State's Hasidic Jewish community have been failing their students. These schools wanted to teach Jewish law and prayer, but in many cases they did not want their students to be learning secular subjects, and they viewed that as a threat to their way of life. We found in case after case that children in this community are growing up not receiving an adequate education and ending up not able to find a job and living in poverty.
What impressed me most was the way these reporters were able to gain the trust of members of a very insular community and collect individual stories and share those stories with compassion.
Next, Michael Balsamo and Michael Sisak of the Associated Press for investigating federal prison abuse.
We wanted to know if a high-profile inmate like Jeffrey Epstein could die in federal custody, what else is happening at these institutions? We wrote about a culture of sexual assaults and cover-ups. We document retaliation against whistleblowers who sought to expose wrongdoing. And we tracked the rise through the ranks of a senior Bureau of Prisons official, despite numerous red flags, including his own admissions that as an officer in the 1990s, he beat inmates. I'm proud that we were able to shine a spotlight on these abuses happening in an agency that for too long has really operated with the cloak of secrecy.
This story crosses geographic lines and documents a range of misconduct. What surprised me most about this investigation is the reporter's ability to get inside the federal prison system, which is notoriously difficult to penetrate.
Our next finalists are Barbara Laker, David Gambacorta, and William Bender of the Philadelphia Inquirer for MIA, Crisis in the Ranks.
We had to try and catch some officers in the act and show that they were actually healthy and working while they were supposedly too hurt to do police work. We explored police abuse of Pennsylvania's generous heart and lung disability benefit. In neighborhoods that were experiencing record levels of gun violence, commanders were telling us that they couldn't even adequately staff their districts because so many cops were out hurt. When we dug a little deeper, we found that the number of reported police injuries had actually fallen by 30% in the previous decade. But the amount of time that officers were staying off the force while they were hurt had tripled.
This story got to the bottom of some astounding instances of cops being placed on leave inappropriately. It had a real impact. Within months, the rate of police officers who were out on injury leave went down by 31%.
Next is Miranda Green and Mario Ariza of Floodlight and David Fulkenflick of NPR for Power Play: How Utilities Paid a Consulting Group that infiltrated local news media, attacked clean energy foes, and intimidated public officials.
You get whispers that this stuff is happening, but so very rarely do you get to prove it. We had been investigating how two of the largest US power companies hired a secretive consulting firm that leveraged a collapsing local media landscape in Florida and Alabama by paying 6 online news sites. The investigation also discovered that a freelance ABC producer had been hired to attack the power company's clean energy critics. It's a rare window into the way that big polluters can manipulate the democratic system and the pressure that local regulators confront if they seek to hold those corporations accountable.
The greatest strength of this investigation is the depth and breadth of the reporting and the sources upon which it was built. It did more than any other story in the Southeast in recent memory to expose exactly how politics can be manipulated and bent to the will of moneyed interests.
Next is Anna Wolf of Mississippi Today for The Back Channel.
We found through private text messages that former Governor Phil Bryant had played a much larger role in Mississippi's sprawling welfare scandal than we were led on to believe. In the texts, Bryant promises to help former NFL legend Brett Favre find funding for an experimental drug project, which ended up receiving millions in stolen welfare funds. He also wielded unilateral control over the welfare department, pushing his appointed director to find funding for his favorite vendors and circumvent standard grant application processes, ultimately leading to the loss of $77 million in welfare funds that were supposed to help the poorest residents in the poorest state in the country.
Even though it was important locally, the repercussions still reverberate nationally. To see it laid out text message by text message was something that just floored people.
And finally, Joshua Schneier, Micah Rosenberg, and Christina Cook of Reuters for Undocumented and Underage.
In mid-2021, we received a tip that an unusually large number of unaccompanied migrant children were headed to a rural county in Alabama. Our series on child labor revealed that children as young as 12 were working in Alabama factories making car parts for Korean auto giant Hyundai. We were surprised to find out just how young some of these children were, and how widespread the problem of child labor was, and how little had been done to stop it. Children shouldn't be working in factories, let alone dangerous metal stamping plants. That's why child labor laws exist.
Reuters avoids the inflammatory debate about immigration policy. Instead, the reporter showed just how easily child labor laws are broken and how devastating the consequences are for employers when they are caught.
So you can appreciate the challenge that our judges faced. And my congratulations to all of our finalists as I announced that the winner of the 2023 Goldsmith Prize in Investigative Reporting is Anna Wolf of Mississippi Today.
What Anna Wolf demonstrates is what can happen when a dogged, persistent reporter doesn't give up on an important story. This is one of those series that when you read, it inspires you to the bone. Could see for yourself exactly how the scheming took place. It made citizens want to learn more about welfare spending. It made government at the state level and the federal level sharpen up their pencils, take note, and take action. And it is certainly worthy of the prestige that the Goldsmith Award can give it.
Wow, I'm so honored to be included in such a world-class group of journalists. You know, it's kind of bittersweet. It's hard to get recognized for something that required people doing such bad things, right? But I do want to say that this story wouldn't have been possible if it had not been for listening to people who were experiencing these things on the ground. You know, they knew better than we did what kind of corruption was occurring, and they knew much earlier than we did. But without them, this story wouldn't have been possible, and I just appreciate that you guys recognize the seriousness of the situation in Mississippi. Thank you.
Congratulations, Anna. I should say that to date, we have only had two-time winners of the Goldsmith Prize. Tonight, that number becomes 3, because Anna was also on the winning team in 2021 for a collaborative reporting team on reporting project on Mississippi's dangerous and dysfunctional penal system. You are also, we believe, the youngest ever solo winner of this prize. Congratulations to you. The Goldsmith Career Award honors outstanding contributions to the field of journalism and work that has enriched our political discourse and our society. This would not be a true journalism event if the news gods weren't going to have their say. Unfortunately, in this case, it means that this morning, Judy Woodruff let us know that she had tested positive for COVID. At the advice of her doctors and in the interest of protecting everyone here, she will be joining us virtually, which in a strange way may be fitting, not only because of what we have lived through together these last years and continue to live through, but because we are accustomed to seeing her night after night on our screens, except usually we don't get to talk back. Judy's extraordinary career as one of the nation's premier news anchors and reporters spans more than 4 decades at NBC, CNN, and PBS. She is currently senior correspondent for the PBS NewsHour after serving for 11 years as its anchor and managing editor. When she and the late Gwen Ifill were named co-anchors of the NewsHour in 2013, it marked the first time at an American national news broadcast was co-anchored by 2 women. Her career was a journey from NBC, where she covered the White House starting in 1976, to the PBS NewsHour in 1982 as senior Washington correspondent and host of Frontline, to CNN in 1993 as senior correspondent and host of Inside Politics, before returning to PBS in 2006. I'll leave it to you to calculate how many presidential campaigns and conventions, how many invasions and investigations and Supreme Court decisions and hurricanes and financial storms and assorted scandals she has helped us make sense of. Judy has been a calm and wise voice for decades in the life of this country. and she has served in numerous other important ways as well, as a visiting professor at Duke University's Terry Sanford Institute of Public Policy. In 2005, she was a visiting fellow here at the Shorenstein Center. She's a founding co-chair of the International Women's Media Foundation and serves on the board of trustees of the Freedom Forum and the Duke Endowment. She has won the Peabody Journalistic Integrity Award, the Poynter Medal, an Emmy for Lifetime Achievement, the Radcliffe Medal, and she and Gwen Ifill were together awarded Arizona State University's Walter Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. Now in her new role as senior correspondent for the NewsHour, she's undertaking a project called America at a Crossroads to better understand the country's political divide. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Goldsmith Career Award winner, Judy Woodruff.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nancy. Thank you to the committee. I can't express to you how sorry I am that I am not there with you in person. I know so many friends who are there. I would love to see you. But yes, the axe fell today. I tested positive this morning. So here I am. And I thank you for letting me join you by Zoom. Words escape me. They don't often do, but they almost escape me this evening. And I have to say, before I say anything else, extending huge congratulations to tonight's other winners, the prize for investigative reporting. We just listened to Anna Wolf of Mississippi Today, the other 5 remarkable finalists for that prize. Of course, the Goldsmith Book Prize winners, Danny Hayes and Jennifer Lawless, along with Deborah Cohen. What a great service each one of you has performed with the work that you've done. All I can say is that I am incredibly honored by this wonderful prize for at least 3 reasons. Number one, Nancy, because it's coming from you, a reporter and writer, someone I've admired and appreciated for a long time, because it comes from the Shorenstein Center, a place that has a special place in my heart and the heart of my husband, Al Hunt, in that it was created almost 4 decades ago in memory of our dear friend, Joan Shorenstein Barone, CBS News producer, brilliant journalist who was taken from us far too young, and a place that has helped since then shape and instill the very best values in countless journalists and public officials. When Walter Shorenstein was trying to figure out where to base the center, Al worked with him and credits Graham Allison with Harvard coming out on top. So we feel a personal connection, all the more reason I'm so honored. And finally, I'm honored because of the iconic journalists the Shorenstein Center has recognized previously with this career prize. People like Ted Koppel, Leslie Stahl, Marty Barron, Kathleen Carroll, who I think is there tonight, each one and so many more have blazed a trail for the rest of us and for so many others. Now, of course, it is the case that the number of years I have spent reporting is more than the sum total of the ages of everyone in the room there. But I'm fine with that. I like to think that I'm a woman in my prime. And I may be the one receiving this prize, but television news is more than any other form of journalism, as you know, a team sport. I couldn't have accomplished anything in my career without the help of producers, camera operators, audio engineers, researchers, editors, lighting techs, the list goes on. I truly am the tip of the television news iceberg. And how lucky I am to have worked for 27 years and counting at the PBS NewsHour, which is all about the team, all about sharing credit while honoring best practices. It has the leadership right now to keep on doing distinctive work for years and years to come. I am so proud of my successors as anchors and of the entire NewsHour team. So my thank yous are endless. But since we're virtual, I told Nancy and her team, I'm not going to make my remarks endless. In thinking about this and how thankful I am to have had this career, I first just want to say I'm grateful. I am filled with gratitude. You are looking at one grateful woman. But I also picked 3 brief things to say tonight, realizing I'm frankly preaching to the choir. Number one, that for all the good work being done, and there is a great deal of it that we're hearing about tonight, the future of journalism in America is in trouble. And number two, that in the face of this, there is good work happening to head that off. And number three, why it's so important that we do so. First, to underline what everybody here knows in this audience, traditional reporting in this country has taken a huge hit. Your book prize winners, Jennifer Lawless and Danny Hayes, cataloged this. Close to 1,800 American newspapers have shut down just in the last 2 decades, including 60 dailies. And it's estimated we're headed to fully 1/3 of U.S. newspapers going under. Many of the rest, we know, have been dramatically downsized. Too much of America is a news desert, with few, if any, reporters asking questions, digging, asking local public officials, business leaders, school boards, law enforcement. It's another reason that tonight's awards recognizing the best of investigative journalism and, of course, these authors matter so much. Into these local news vacuums have come valiant and meaningful efforts right now to shore up grassroots journalism, funded often by foundations, wealthy individuals. Thank heaven for these groups that are funding these local journalism efforts. They are growing, they're making a difference. What's also flowed in, however, are rivers of rumor, misinformation, and disinformation, facilitated by the internet and by social media. People can access now, we know, just about any kind of information they want, whether it's vetted, accurate, or simply made up. The collapse of the business model for journalism, we know, has come hand in hand with a technological revolution that has upended the way we get news and the kind of news that we get. It's opened the floodgates, and it's elevated opinion over facts. Of course, we want to be able to express opinion, but it should be based on what's real. And all this has helped to drive Americans further apart in what we know, what we believe, and who and what we trust. And as Nancy mentioned, this is one of the things I very much want to be investigating and examining in my reporting project for the NewsHour over the next 2 years. We could be throwing up our hands in despair. There's plenty of reason to want to do that. But it's also reminded us of the critical mission of journalism to gather facts, to shine a light on dark places, to hold the powerful accountable, and to keep our democracy strong. A free and robust press is essential, we know, for democracy to work. If we don't redouble our efforts to fight for that robust free press now, will we have a chance to do that in the future? Tonight's winners are leading the way. And look around the world for all the flaws in the American press. We are well ahead of our reporter brothers and sisters in so many other parts of the world. They want to do the same kind of reporting we do, holding the powerful accountable, but far too often they can't. They are threatened, they're locked up, they're run out of their country, or they're murdered by governments and by thugs. Over the past 30 years, almost 2,200 journalists and media workers worldwide have been killed just for doing their job. And just look next door to Mexico, to China, Russia, Iran, Turkey, much of the Middle East. While we may get upset, yes, at a lot of things, if somebody doesn't, and including if somebody doesn't return a phone call or a text message, our siblings in countries from Nicaragua to Ethiopia and Bangladesh flee their homes to find safety in exile here in the United States or in other Western nations. We have to continue to be the freedom, the beacon of freedom, and the beacon of democracy the rest of the world looks to, even as they see our mistakes in plain sight. This is a moment all of us in the press have to stick to our work, to keep digging for facts, and when one source runs dry, pursue another. This is no time to grow weary. We're not going to win friends, but with more transparency and more facts, we will do our critical part to keep our democratic system strong. I am incredibly honored and humbled by this prize. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Judy, I so wish we were sitting together on this historic stage, but I am so grateful to you for joining us. And obviously, I hope that everyone in your household is feeling fine and has an easy go of it. I'm so tempted to ask you all kinds of things about your extraordinary career in the past, but I actually, given what you've just said, would love to focus actually on the present and the future and hear a little more about America at the Crossroads. Why that project? What are you looking to understand better? Where are you going with that?
Well, Nancy, thank you for asking. As the time came closer for me to think about stepping aside, stepping down from the anchor desk, I knew I wanted to keep reporting. And the thing that was just staring me in the face as a long-time political reporter, you did me a favor and said 4 decades. It's actually 5 decades. And a couple. In all the years I've covered American politics, I don't remember a time when we've been as personally and bitterly divided. Yes, we have had great arguments and debates over everything from the war in Vietnam, the civil rights movement, and so much more. And of course, in our history of centuries ago, the Civil War, there's so much in the American past and present that has divided us. But there's something different, I think, about what's going on now. And a number of researchers, academics have been looking at this and why it's there. Why do Americans now have this, not just view that the other side is wrong, but that they are immoral or lazy or not good Americans? There's just an extra layer now that's been put on top of everything else that defines disagreement in this country. And by the way, disagreement's healthy. Debate is healthy. We should be debating the great questions of our time. We don't expect everybody to fall in line. That's not what we're talking about. It's just when family members can't sit down over Thanksgiving dinner together, when neighbors who have lived next to each other for a long time don't speak to each other anymore, and so many more examples of that. People who are, we now know the patterns. People are not moving to areas where they think people may disagree with them politically. We're moving into our own silos and our own private places where we are with other people who think just like us. Some of that is fine, but I worry about where it is, where it's leading us. And especially, Nancy, as we think about the news that we're getting today, which, people can pick and choose what channel, what news source, what social media channel, what newspaper they want to read. They don't have to. There's no one place that we all agree to. The days of Walter Cronkite and major American newspapers are a thing of the past. And so, where does that leave us? I mean, when we cannot agree on facts, we can't agree on a set of facts from which we are free to come to different conclusions. But that's what I hope to do. We're planning to hit the road in coming days. My COVID has delayed that by a couple of days. We were going to be traveling this week, actually. But we'll be all across the country, going to cities, small towns, rural areas, cities of all sizes, trying to talk to Americans, frankly, in the middle of the country, who sometimes are overlooked.
You mentioned both the geographical and the epistemic sorting that has gone on as people, find their comfort zones, literally and informationally. I'd love to know the extent to which how you think about the media's role in this, and the extent to which it's a reflection of those divisions or a contributor to them.
Well, it's my view, but it's also buttressed by the political scientists and others we've been talking to in these past weeks and months, that it's both. I mean, people are divided. They are hearing from their leaders, our political leaders, that they shouldn't tolerate a different point of view. But they're also, the news media is feeding on that in many ways. I mean, the news media thrives on disagreement, on conflict. And I think our hands are dirty as well. Again, I'm not saying we don't cover disagreement, we don't cover debate, we should. But when that becomes the driving narrative of what we're doing, that it's always an argument, a name-calling contest. That's not the whole picture. There's more going on than that. And so I think the media plays a significant role, but our political leaders, they certainly have no question played a role. And the American citizens are going along with it. I mean, I'll expand it out. The fact that we don't have civic education taught in the American public schools as much as we used to. People grow up not really ever learning about not just how a bill becomes a law, but not, frankly, understanding American history, that we've worked through divisions in the past. And now it's good for all of us if we can continue to work through our divisions. I'm ultimately an optimist. I watch the American people and how they've come through the challenges that we've been through, and know it's not perfect, but I have to be an optimist. I have to believe that we are going to find a way through this, but it's going to take time and a lot of people owning up to their responsibility and thinking about how we can relate to one another differently.
The problems that our industry is facing, we're not alone when we look at the measures of institutional trust across political institutions, business, the church. The media is one of many institutions where that decline has, as you know, been now steady over 40 years. I'm wondering if you have a theory about the particular lack of trust and decline of trust in the news, and even more, what kinds of steps, if you were running a newsroom now, would you be looking to take to try to address that?
It's such an important question. I think two things are at play, and it really does go back to your last question about where does most of the responsibility lie. There's no question our political leaders have fed the beast, if you will, with name calling and with calling the media out and fake news and all the rest of it, enemies of the American people. That's all there. We know that. That's clearly done harm. But in addition to that, the media, for all good intents and purposes, has become, I think, in many ways, in at least the media that I hang out with in Washington, we've become, we're not embedded in the country as much anymore. We live in Washington or New York, or some of us in LA or Boston, and we're all trying our darndest to do the best we can, but we're not in the country, of the country. And while there is, as we've been discussing, good journalism going on out there, we need to keep talking to the American people in every community across the country. They need to have a voice in what we do. I think we saw some of that certainly in the 2016 election. And I think it continues today. I think we have to look at ways, creative ways, to connect with the American people and to listen to what they're saying, and to give them, to know that we don't have all the answers. And I'm not suggesting all the press, comes across that way, but I think in some instances we have come across as kind of, we have the tablets, we're coming down from on high and we're telling you the way it is. And a lot of that is a result of great reporting. But some of it, I think, it needs to be tempered and balanced with, what the American people are experiencing in small town America, inner city America, small rural America, from one end of the country to the other. We're a big, big country. And I want to make sure that the media continues to stay connected to the American people.
One thing that I think you're pointing to that I'm always wrestling with is there's always evidence, anecdotal certainly, but also research. The study a group that starts with us came out with last week about people testifying to a hunger for news that is more uplifting, that talks about solutions, that addresses issues and opportunities that might be less divisive, show us what's working in our communities, and yet, particularly the national press is accused of having an absolutely unfailing negativity bias. And so I'm curious if you have a theory about this. Is it that reporters are more drawn to stories about venality and corruption, feel like it's their real responsibility to expose what's not working? Is that a distortion of reality? And how should we think about the balance of, for lack of a better, good news versus bad news?
It's such a great question, Nancy. I didn't go to journalism school. I learned on the job covering the Georgia State Legislature. I learned from my colleagues at the CBS affiliate in Atlanta then, way back in 1970, 71, 72, how to put a story together, how to write a story. I learned from scratch. But yes, from the very beginning, the sense was news is what's going wrong. Yes, it's what's happening. If I'm covering the Georgia State Legislature and they pass a major tax bill, that's news. But in addition to that, when things blow up, when they go wrong, when there's a fight, when people are yelling at each other, that makes news too. And I think over time, that has clearly, in my opinion, crowded out, whether you want to call it solutions journalism or just another look at what's going on. I'm not at all arguing that we should do Pollyanna. We need to, everything's going to turn out fine, and every story needs to have a solution. I'm not saying that, but it does need to be part of what we're looking at when we cover a story. Not everyone, but there needs to be some balance, because you're right. People think of news as the plane crash, the car accident, the drug, drug killing. And yes, those things are news. But we have a lot of news space. And as long as people are reading us and listening to us and watching us and following us online, we can find ways to tell some of those stories too.
Among the many things that makes your career path so unusual is that you have been right at the heart of both some of the world's biggest for-profit newsrooms and at PBS. And there's obviously an ongoing debate about whether good journalism can be profitable in this environment and the challenges of the business model, or whether this is really a moment when philanthropy and public media and other funding sources is going to have to pick up the slack. And I'm curious, given your experience with all different types, what you think about that.
I think it's tough. The business model has collapsed, as we discussed earlier. Newspapers, news organizations are scrambling to figure out how to make it work without pandering to the lowest common denominator, how to cover the news in a way that's responsible and edifying and informative, but without doing just celebrity news. And that I'm exaggerating to make a point, clearly. I know public media because I think I mentioned I've been at the NewsHour for 27 years altogether, 10 years, and then 17 most recently. And what we are able to do, frankly, is not worry about eyeballs every night. We want people to watch. Clearly, we are trying to put on the best, most informative, compelling, watchable, listenable, and again, informative newscasts we possibly can. But we don't have to chase Hollywood. We don't have to chase, whatever high-profile crime story happened that day. If something rises to a level that there's a reason to talk about it, yes, but not to just cover these things for the sake of covering them. And that there's no question that gives us some freedom that commercial media may not always have. But I'm not going to slander all my commercial media friends. I worked at, as you said, in local news, for CBS station. I worked at NBC, CNN. They are doing some really fine work. And they are under a lot of pressure from so many directions.
I suspect these coming weeks and months is likely to be just a series of you accepting lifetime achievement awards and honors and efforts to celebrate the incredible contribution you've made. So I'm curious, as you have all of these opportunities to think about your journey, if there are particular stories or moments that stand out to you as the highest of highlights or the lowest of lowlights.
Well, you know, when I think about that, I think about quiet moments I spent in the house of a group of voters in Toledo, Ohio, or covering a political convention in Chicago, Atlanta, New York, San Francisco. I think a lot about politics, but I'm also, Nancy, inevitably drawn to some of the toughest moments in my career. I was there the day President Reagan was shot. I was part of the pool that day, and I know that had a profound impact on me as a reporter. It turned out I was, I think, 3 or 4 months pregnant with our first child at the time. And it's just one of those moments that you take with you forever. 9/11, like any of the reporters who covered 9/11 and watched, and with just utter disbelief that this could happen. So yes, those things have happened, but the things that I choose most to remember are some of those wonderful conversations with people around a coffee table, or a kitchen table, in one of these places. Like, I'm heading to Wisconsin soon, whether it's Ohio, Wisconsin, the middle of America, talking to people about what matters to them, what do they think about the issues, what do they worry about, what keeps them up at night. To me, those are some of the most special and memorable conversations I've had.
Because, and I'll end it here, but because we are here at a great university, because the Shorenstein Center sits at the Kennedy School, which is designed to train public leaders, I think of journalism as a form of public leadership. And like you, feel incredibly lucky to have gotten to spend a career in this field. But I wonder what you say these days to young people who are considering their paths and thinking about whether journalism is the right one for them. What advice do you give?
I tell them to please jump in. The water's fine. That yes, we are facing enormous challenges. The business model is broken, and we're trying to figure out how to fix it. Yes, we're facing this technological nightmare with social media and news online that is just coming at us in a flood that we can barely, some of us, separate what's real from what isn't. And my heart goes out to the American news consumers as they try to understand, what to trust. But I say to young people, just, frankly, what I said a few minutes ago, that if we don't have journalists who are pouring themselves into digging up the facts, turning over documents, digging in dark places and asking tough questions and holding people accountable, then our country is hurt by that. So they have a role to play as citizens, and as journalists. And I think I said a minute ago, I'm ultimately an optimist for all the negativity out there. But in my experience, Nancy, the young people I'm talking to, they see a spark of something where they can make a contribution. And we have to encourage them to keep on doing that, because they're going to be carrying the torch for decades and decades to come. We have to continue being that place that the world looks to for great, courageous, groundbreaking journalism.
Well, on a night when we celebrate both the career of an extraordinary, iconic journalist and the work of our youngest ever solo winner, I can't think of a better place to end. Judy Woodruff, thank you so much for all you've done.
Thank you.
And I would like to add my thanks. You have been such an inspiration to so many of us. So thank you for that. And let me thank all of you for taking the time to come tonight and to be part of this conversation. It is critically important that we explore and honor the values that this prize represents. And a lot of work goes into making this possible. So I would like to thank, as we close, first the extraordinary staff of the Shorenstein Center who pulled all of the pieces together to get everyone here. Let me also thank our faculty and fellows and scholars who every day are doing the kind of work that informs and elevates this discourse and asks these hard questions and is working to help us be smarter about the challenges that Judy was talking about. I want to thank our board that gives us advice and our donors and supporters that make this possible, and all of you in the community who keep us working and thinking and exploring and questioning ourselves and one another. Because ultimately, the well-being that we all care about of our institutions, our communities, our country, is really going to depend on the success and access to information that is reliable, that is vetted, that is deeply reported and questioned. And so if we are not equipped to train people to do that and encourage them and support them and help them, then all of the other problems we are trying to solve as a country are going to be a lot harder. So thank you for all the different ways that you contribute to that work and for joining us tonight as we celebrate the very best of it. Thank you very much.